Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Shin Kim. I'm teaching history of Israel, and actually this is 13 12 maybe 12th class and end of actually last class. Congratulations until to the end. And yeah, so many times you already watched this one. BC 1100 Abraham, you know so that's why I'm dealing with the story of the Abraham. Abraham is the uh, father of Israel, and he has the son called Isaac and Jacob. During the time of Jacob, they entered Egypt, and they stayed there over 400 years in Egypt as a slave, and finally, by the leadership of Moses, actually they escaped from the Egypt. And yeah, that era is called age of patriarch, and between the age of the patriarchy and the age of judge, there was an Exodus story, and the first judge called actually Joshua, and almost 200 years they finally entered the land of Canaan. They stayed there, but 12, 12 actually tribes they lived separately, and finally the whole people actually of Israel, they asking God, give us God, and they become BC 1000 and become the one united kingdom. The first king Saul, I already deal with him, and the second king, King David, yeah, one of our favorite, actually one whom actually loved by God, and the third king Solomon. And unfortunately, after the death of the King Solomon, the nation was divided: Kingdom of Israel, Kingdom of Judah. And BC 712, fall of Israel to Assyrian Empire, and after that, only the Kingdom of Judah, the southern area of Israel, was actually survived, and but unfortunately, BC 586, actually, fall of Jerusalem to Nebuchadnezzar army, actually Babylonian actually empire. Yeah, you also see this chart several times. Just look at Israel, no, the kingdom of Israel, finish the history finished BC 722 by Assyrian, and Judah. There was sometimes good king and bad kings throughout the history of kingdom of Judah, and it finished BC 586 by Babylonian Empire. So after that, actually, there is no mention. That's actually disconnect of the actually whole Israel history. And before the Jesus Christ, there is a little bit short time, around 100 years. Actually, they have independence, but it survived very long, a short time. Today, I'm gonna deal with after BC 586 to AD, the time of Jesus Christ. Very during that time, little bit I'm gonna explain about that. And as I said, BC 722, Kingdom of Israel was annexed to Assyrian Empire, and the end of the story of Kingdom of Israel. And BC 586, Kingdom of Judah was also annexed to Babylonian Empire. So after that, many actually Jewish people, they should leave their country, and they moved to the Assyrian Empire and the Babylonian Empire. So the person who lost their nation and living other country, other area called, looks like diaspora, called diaspora. So look at the map. Actually, Palestine, okay, Jerusalem, in that area, actually, Jewish people actually moved to Mesopotamia and Judea, or also go to the northern part, and also northern part of Armenia, and they go to the also the Europe area, Phrygia, and Macedonia, Greece. Okay, Greece. They went there, and even many actually Jewish people moved to North Africa. Some kind of capital city of the Egypt, Alexandria, and they moved to the Syrian. And that means after losing their nation, many Jewish people actually move out to other countries. So Jews were forced to live in foreign land. And the prophet Ezekiel and other Jewish exiles lived in Babylonia. So many people actually, after the fall of Judah, actually many the Jewish people actually they must move to the Babylon. Okay, Babylon, the capital city of Babylonian actually empire. They were actually moved out, and Jews met each week on the Sabbath. Sabbath is Saturday actually, and the day of worship, and the rest in synagogue. So they lost that the temple of God was destroyed. So there is no place to actually offer sacrifice, animal sacrifice. So instead of offer animal sacrifice, actually they getting together and they read the Old Testament. That actually worship service could be found in other area, diaspora. And BC 538, around 200 years, actually, another actually empire called the Persian Empire, actually. Persian Empire actually arose. Actually, Persian defeated the Chaldeans and took control of the Babylon and its dependence, including the Israel. In BC 539, that means the end of Babylonian, the end of history, the end of history of Babylonian Empire. But actually, Babylonian Empire was the owner of Israel. But that nation, that actually Babylonian Empire was occupied by Persian Empire. So Persian defeated the Babylonian Empire, and they become another owner. They become the owner of Israel. Especially Persian King Cyrus allowed Jewish people to return to Judah. So even when you read the Bible in Old Testament, you may see the king named Cyrus. Okay, Cyrus the Persian were regarded as an instrument appointed by God to deliver the Israelite exiles. So as I said, many actually Israelite people, Jewish people were arrested and they were moved to the Babylon. But Cyrus, another actually new Persian emperor, new kingdom, new empire, Persian Empire. Actually, Cyrus actually allowed Jewish people return to their country. So that kind of story actually written in the book of Isaiah. And Cyrus followed a more tolerant policy. That means he allowed, he showed grace to the people. Okay, now you may have your own religion. Now you may return to your original land, back to your country. But still, actually, Israel was under occupation by of the Persian Empire. But Cyrus was generous. And even Cyrus decreed that Temple of Yahweh should be rebuilt in Jerusalem. Previously by the Babylonian Empire, okay, the Temple of God established by King Solomon was totally destroyed, but Cyrus, the Persian emperor, actually helped to rebuild the Temple of God in Jerusalem. He was generous. So, and look at the map, the Persian Empire, Cyrus the Great, actually, yeah, that nation called the Persian Empire reached to India, okay? Look at the map, right side, you may see the India. His actually empire reached to the India, and he coming to the west, finally conquered the area of Babylon. He conquered Babylon. So you may see the Babylonian Empire conquered by Cyrus in 539 BC. So there was a great actually emperor called Cyrus. Actually he conquered the Babylonian Empire automatically. Jerusalem was occupied by Persian Empire. So yeah, the nation, actually, the person who lost their nation, they're gonna suffer a lot. They conquered by some specific nation, and after that, another nation, continuously. Unfortunately, the capital city of the Israel, Jerusalem, was occupied so many nations. But number one was the Babylonian Empire, and exactly only 300 years later, Persian Empire actually become the owner of the land of Israel. And exile and return, as I said, Cyrus was generous, and he actually allowed many Jewish people back to their country. So Jewish people returned from Babylonia by the permission of Cyrus, the Persian Empire. The Hebrews rebuilt the temple of God in Jerusalem, and the construction of the second temple. First temple was built by the King Solomon. Now they are building a second temple. And with the encouragement of Haggai, Zedekiah, they are actually great prophet. And the permission of King Darius first, and the book of Esther indicate there are many Jews, they live in Persian Empire. So whenever you read the Bible, especially some specific book, kinds of Esther's, the book of Jeremiah, the book of Ezekiel, maybe if you know the exact actually time period, you may understand why they wrote like that. So even Esther, she was become the even she was Jewish, and she lived in Persian Empire, and she become the queen of the Persian emperor. So you may actually understand that why Esther wrote like that kind of content. And Xerxes, actually Darius' son, and Leonidas, actually he is the king of Sparta. They have a battle. So there was a battle between the Persia versus Greece. That means another new owner of Jerusalem, another new owner of Israel, going to be actually next owner going to be Greece. If you maybe take my another class, Western civilization, I already actually explained about Mesopotamia civilization, Greece civilization, Roman civilization. Today maybe I'm gonna deal with a little bit about them, because first time Babylonian first owner of the Israel. Actually the Persian Empire going to be second actually owner of Israel. Now it looks like the Greek actually become third actually owner of Israel. And Nehemiah, a little bit I'm talking about under the temple of God was destroyed by the Babylonian Empire, and against the second owner of the Israel become the Persian empire, and Cyrus, the king of Persian Empire, actually he allowed many Jewish back to their country. And Jeremiah, even though he was living in Persian Empire, by the permission of the Persian king, he was Nehemiah actually was allowed to back to his country, original land, Israel. So Nehemiah, he was cupbearer to the Persian king. Finally, he came to Jerusalem as governor. and he rebuilt the wall of Jerusalem with help and support from the Persian officials. Actually, Nehemiah was the signer of the national covenant with God to obey the law and to observe the Sabbath and to condemn marriage with pagan. So usually, Israel people, they were forbidden to marry to other native. So when you read the book of Nehemiah, you may understand that. Okay, if you understand the historical fact. And with that knowledge, when you read the Bible, you may understand more easily. Okay, and as I said, suddenly again, Greek actually period. There is a war. There was a war between the Persian Empire and the Greek Greek Empire. So there are actually several wars actually between the Greece versus Persian Empire. Maybe many of you love the story of the 300 movie, okay? Especially the male student, actually the boys and men's actually love the movie 300. Actually, that movie is dealing with the war between the Greek versus Persian Empire. Okay, exactly that period. So in BC 303, Alexander the Great, you may heard of his name. Okay, he's extremely great emperor. Alexander the Great defeated Darius III of Persia Empire. So that means the new owner of Israel, and he made his victorious way, conquering and receiving submission through Syrian Palestine, and he actually conquered so huge land, okay, almost his kingdom. Alexander the Great kingdom actually reached to also India through also Western Europe. And the Greek allowed to Jew to run their state. So his actually land is so huge. So he appointed some governor. So he introduced the Greek language. Actually, based on that culture, the New Testament was written in Greek. Okay, the first Bible, the first New Testament was written in Greek because Greek civilization influence was huge when the church was born. In the division of Alexander Empire, Palestine was assigned to Ptolemy. Actually, he is the king of Egypt, and he actually the Greek actually empire actually allowed it. And he took many Jewish captive and settled them in Alexandria. So Ptolemy actually he also arrested a lot of capture a lot of actually Israel people and brought them to their nation in Egypt as a slave. And you may see the picture of Alexander, huge eyes and big nose. And he was great actually emperor. So look at the map, the empire of Alexander the Great. As I said, to the actually east, you may see the India, and to the west, northern Africa, and even including whole actually Greek area. His empire was huge, okay, and I'm not sure, you may find Jerusalem little bit left low side, you may see the Jerusalem. So again, Greek empire become the third owner of the Israel or Jerusalem. Ptolemy II actually invited 6 men from the 12 tribe. Actually, there was 12 tribe in Israel, okay? Because Jacob has 12 sons, and each sons become the ancestor of each tribe, so 12 tribe. And Ptolemy invites six persons from each tribe. Altogether, 72 men had produced a translation of the Old Testament into Greek called the Septuagint. So during that time was actually the Greek civilization, Greek empire ruling over the whole area. So the public language was Greek. That's why actually Ptolemy II actually translate Hebrew Bible, the Bible written in Hebrew to translate in Greeks. And Antiochus actually encouraged the Greek religion, culture, custom in Judea. In need of the money for war, actually, Antiochus actually loved the temple in Jerusalem. Actually, there is a new actually appointed king by the Greek Empire. He called Antiochus. Actually, he actually make an idol, established the idol in the temple of the God. So many Jewish people actually got angry against him. That's why there was a revolt. So because of ensuing riot, revolt against Antiochus' policy, he sent an army which killed, plundered, and destroyed Jerusalem. The worship of Zeus. Maybe you know these kings who has already through the thunder, okay, from the heaven. Olympias was introduced in the temple. So he destroyed the temple of God and established the temple of Zeus, and that's why many actually Jewish people angry at him. And you may see the picture. This is actually Septuagint, actually translated in Greek, Old Testament. So this is one of the example of Septuagint. That's why we can still keep the Old Testament. And because of previous actually King Antiochus, actually he make a dirty. He changed the temple of God to temple of Zeus. So many Jewish people angry about that because there are many Jewish people. Jewish people has only, they believe in one God, creator. The ancestor, the God of Abraham, God of Jacob, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob. They believe that. And there is a great revolt actually. So by the leadership of Maccabi or Maccabean, actually there was extremely short time, almost 100 years. Finally, Israel gained independence, and they could establish their own country. Previously, Babylonian and the Persian and the Greek, and finally there was riot and revolt against the rule of the Greek Empire. They have a war against. So Maccabeans or Hashemonian, there are some family name, revolt against the restriction on the practice of Judaism and the desecration of the temple. They make it dirty. They change the Greek emperor, Greek empire actually change the temple of God into the temple of Zeus. That's why there are so many names, even I cannot remember. Mattathias' son Judas, actually Judas, he actually was called Maccabeus, meaning the hammerer. Maybe you know the hammer. He is maybe strong fist. He can hit the Greek. Maccabees drove the Greek out of Judea. Finally, they got the independence. They established the nation of Israel for short times. Judas or Maccabeus rebuilt the altar of Yahweh, and the related events are celebrated during the Hanukkah. Actually, dedication, cleansing of the temple. Previously, it changed to the temple of Zeus, but by the revolt of the Judas or Maccabee, actually he was successful to establishing his one kingdom. So when I actually come to actually USA, and one day actually I heard that Hanukkah. Even when I look at the calendar, American calendar, I saw the Hanukkah, but I didn't know true meaning of Hanukkah. But I study about it. Finally, I figured it out. Hanukkah, that means return or cleansing of the temple from Jews' temple to the temple of God by the Maccabee. Also, almost they lost their country several hundred years. Finally, by the leadership of Judah or Maccabee, they have their one nation. So they're gonna celebrate their independence, even though it only lasts 100 years. You may see the painting, and this is a war between the Jewish Jews versus Greek. Finally, Maccabee won the war, and he got his one kingdoms. So BC 129 through 630 BC. This actually short time Jewish independence, especially Hasmonean monarchy. Hasmonean monarchy is almost more than 50 years. So you may see the map, red parts, and that actually belong to the Maccabee, and the Maccabee has the family name of Hashmonean, so sometimes Hashmonean or Maccabee kingdom. But unfortunately, after the fall of the Greek civilization, Greek empire, another strong nation called the Roman Empire. So BC 201, Rome actually conquered the Mediterranean world, and the new owner of Western Europe. BC actually 630, Pompey came to Jerusalem and captured the temple. So Roman Empire become fourth actually owner of Israel or Jerusalem. And Roman Empire was also huge land, so Roman Emperor appointed King Herod. So Herod, as a Roman best king, he ruled the land of Israel, and his famous building project was new temple. So many times, okay? Even though first temple was built by the King Solomon, second temple was built by the prophet Nehemiah. Finally, another maybe looks like a third project of new temple. He began in Jerusalem. And Herod killed his wife and 3 sons out of fear. Usually, the kingship was unstable, and as soon as you become the king, start out everybody. Who gonna kill me? Who gonna be next king? He concerned about that. And his name is written in the New Testament because when Jesus was born, and the King Herod, heard that there was a new king was born in Bethlehem. So he was afraid, and he commanded to kill the under 1 years old. So the sad story written in New Testament. So look at the painting. Actually, the army of King Herod, actually they are Rome, okay, Roman Empire. They try to kill babies. Maybe under 1 years old, they kill every babies. So so many mothers cry about that. So even yeah, the angel of God actually appeared in the dream of Joseph, the father of Jesus Christ, and hey, wake up, run to Egypt, because King Herod tried to kill your son Jesus. So that's why Joseph and Mary, they wake up and they run to the Egypt. So only when they may return, when King Herod died, because King Herod tried to kill a new king called Jesus Christ. And look at the map again. The Roman Empire, huge, okay? So a little bit light below area, you may see the Judea. Judea is actually Israel, okay? Actually, that's why Roman Empire become fourth actually owner of Israel. First owner, Babylonian Empire. Second owner, Persian Empire. Third owner, Greek Empire. Finally, Roman Empire become the fourth actually new owner of Israel. Yeah, unfortunately, after losing their country, actually Israel actually experienced so many changing of their new owners. That's the actually tragedy of the person who lost their nation. And Jesus was born in period of Roman Empire. That's why I'm dealing even some stories about the Augustus actually. At the time, Roman emperor was Augustus. Augustus ruled as a Roman emperor, and he ruled over the Israel. So even in New Testament, the name Augustus was written. So another actually appointed king, you may remember King Herod, and son of King Herod, actually called Herod Antipas. Actually, he ruled in the area of Israel, and his marriage to his brother was actually he stole his younger brother's wife, named Herodias. Her name was also written in the Bible, brought the river of John the Baptist. So everybody knew that. Everybody knew that the King Herod Antipas actually stole the wife of his younger brother, and that was considered of a sin, but nobody talking about that. But John the Baptist, when he faced with King Herod, he criticized him. You are a great sinner. Why do you steal the wife, your younger brother's wife? And because of that, King Herod and Herodias, they get mad at John the Baptist, and finally they arrest John the Baptist and cut his head. So Herod actually examined Jesus in Jerusalem before the crucifixion. So Jesus was brought to the foot of King Herod, and King Herod actually summoned, and he tried to judge in the court in Jesus Christ. And Pontius Pilate, actually he is a Roman governor. Actually Pilate actually he sentenced Jesus Christ death penalty. So it is exactly happened during the period of Roman Empire, because Jesus was Christ during that time. So that's why I'm little bit actually dealing with that story. Some actually period after the fall of Jerusalem by the Babylonian Empire to the New Testament period, actually many story were not written in neither in Old Testament nor in New Testament. Many actually story has been skipped, but little bit actually New Testament dealing with the period of Roman Empire, and that's why you may, if you are Christians, you may familiar to King Herod and Pontius Pilate, even Apostle Creed. You may heard of the Pontius Pilate. Okay, so that's why actually this is the whole history, and I'm going to finish the end of whole Israel history. And your homework going to be summary of the lecture and your final exam, because today is last day. So your final exam going to be watch the movie Ben-Hur, because this happened during the period of Roman Empire. Thank you for taking my class, and have a good vacation after finishing your final exam. Thank you. See you next semester.